Okay, first of all, let me tell you guys about this boot camp. Here we are going to, learn about the data science and machine learning algorithms. Then we'll, do quite a lot of projects as well. Using that, you will get a lot of practical experience as well. So the prerequisites from your side that I want is that you must be, you must have basic understanding of Python programming language, and definitely if you are proficient with it, you'll be able to understand the whole boot camp a hell lot easy. It will be a hell lot easier for you guys. So without further ado, let's get started with it. So first, the basic tools for data science that is required is the pandas library. As we all know, we will be using Python programming language. Python provides us a lot of libraries, uh, which makes our work easier. There are also very low level languages like C, but that don't provide that much libraries and object oriented experience. Python is a perfect package for especially for data science and machine learning. And the first aspect in data science is to doing handling the data, doing the data analysis part, and pandas helps us in this only. So this is the definition of pandas. Pandas is a software library written for the Python programming language for data manipulation and analysis. Yeah, so let me tell you about pandas. It will be using pandas to read and write data, and doing a lot of operations on the data, like putting it in a tabular form called data frame, or extracting meaningful values from it. So this was the theoretical part. This doesn't involve much of theory. More of practical is required. So let me tell you about this. Yeah we'll start with some coding part, where I'll be using various functions, trying to I'll load the data for you, and then you can come up with questions if you have any doubts. And lastly, after the class, I'll be sharing an assignment with you guys, which you'll have to complete and mail it to me. Or what we can do is I can provide you a solution as well, and then you can verify. We can do it both ways. So let us start. So the first step is to import pandas. Since we know Python has a lot of libraries, so the first step involves is importing that library that we are going to use. In this case, we are going to import pandas. It is a very simple syntax: import pandas as pd. As pd is a alias that I am providing here. You can give it any name you want. If you want to call it let's say PDS, you can call it PDS. It's up to you. Generally, in the data science community, we use import pandas as PD, and it has been standard ever
Chitra,
since. Yeah,
what is this you are using to demonstrate to students?
sure. Okay, this is the Google Collaboratory. This is the Jupyter Google version of Jupyter. You all are having Jupyter Notebook installed, right? I had shared a document with you guys on the group. Has everyone installed the environment? Kindly hit a yes in the chat box. Okay, Shivani says yes. What about else? Okay, okay, not yet, sir. Vedant says okay. Vedant, so what you can do is you haven't installed it, right? So you can go to googlecolab.com. You just go to Google and Google it, Google Collaboratory. You'll get an online IDE without. Let me share the link with you guys. Yeah. यार पकोगे पकोगे पकोगे.
Local system setup. So we will be using for learning purposes only Google Colab. Okay.
Yeah, here is the link in the
Yeah, link is
link is there in the description
in the comments chat.
chat box. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, again, is my screen visible to you all?
Yes, visible.
Great, great. Please open those who haven't, installed the system, and those who have installed Jupyter, you can, directly work on Jupyter as well. No issues with that.
Also start coding side by side. If we
Definitely, yeah.
command, you also run it alongside.
Because that will, if you encounter any error, you can ask it on the go.
That's the benefit of live. Okay?
Just let me know when I can start. When everyone has opened their IDs and set up the necessary environment. Just hit a yes in the chat box.
So this is the first session. So some time will be taken in the setup. So from the next session, it will be all very smooth. Okay.
And if anyone is encountering any issues, any errors, please let us know right away, so that no one lags behind.
I think you can start. Okay.
Okay, great. So the first step involves is importing the library. So this is the syntax for it: import pandas as PD, and I can hit this play button, or I can use shift plus enter. Both do the same function, that they'll run the code cell, right? So now I have imported the pandas into my system. Now I can use it to load the data. Here I'll be using this housing CSV. Basically CSV is known as a comma separated values. It is a type of file that can be opened in Excel and pandas and other softwares. So I'll try to import this CSV file into my Jupyter system. So this is data set of housing prices, California housing prices. It is a very famous data set. When you will be learning data science, you will come across this data set quite often. So this is the data set. It contains different values about the longitude, latitude, the median age of the house, how old is the age, total number of rooms in the house, the total number of bedrooms in the house, the population in the area where the house is, and how many households are there in the neighborhood, median income of the family in the neighborhood. It's a that kind of data set. Ocean proximity, if it is near the ocean, near the ocean bay, or it is somewhere deep in the deserts, or in the city. So this kind of data set it is, and we'll be importing it using pandas read CSV method. I'll call it data. Data is my variable that I'm going to store my data frame into. So equal to PD dot read CSV. Read CSV is the method provided by the pandas library. What it will do, it will read this CSV file. I'll use my inverted commas, copy path, and then load this data. Okay, you guys might be needing this data as well, right? So let me again share this on Google Drive and share it with you guys. Give me a moment. I'll be sharing the link for the data right away. Yeah. Give me a moment, guys. Please be patient.
You can keep on explaining things while you are uploading them.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Okay. So I have shared the link on the chat box. You can download the from the Google Drive and then load it on your system using the read CSV method. Let me know how many of you are coding along and how many of you are just listening, because it can be sometimes people can code side by side, but someone wants to listen first and then see the recording again and then code. You can do it both ways. uh, you know Use the method in which you are most comfortable with. You'll get the recording as well, so you can code after this live session as well. Okay, so Sunil is coding along, Vedansh is coding, or Shivangi is only listening. Okay, no issues then. I'm going to continue now. Using the read CSV method, I'm going to read the CSV data into my system, right? So now I have loaded it. Now I'll use data dot head method. Now what this will do, this will print the first n lines. Generally n is default equal to 5 by default, but I can, let's say, alter it by saying n equal to 10. Now what is this doing? See, it is showing me first 10 rows 0 to 9 of my CSV file. Now if I change this to, let's say, n equal to 15, it will show me first 15 rows. Mind you, it is starting from 0, that's why it is going from 0 to 14. That is total 15 rows. By default Python starts from 0. The indexing starts from 0 in Python. But if I don't use any value of n and leave it directly as it is, it will show only 5 values, because n equal to 5 is stored by default into this method. Yeah. Similarly, using the head function, I can see top 5 lines or top n lines. What if I want to see the bottom lines? Then I can use the tail method. Again, n works the same way. If I'll not use any value of n, it will show me last 5 values. But if I choose n equal to, let's say, 10, I'm going to get last 10 values. Indexing is again, since it has total 20,000 something some values, so it is going to show index in that order only. Let me know if this is clear and if anyone is having any doubt. Please don't feel shy. You can on the spot stop me where you feel in doubt and come up with ask whatever your query you have. Great. So let me continue. So again, Pandas offers us data structures as well, like the way you saw here. This is a data structure because it is holding some data. This is called data frame. It is a tabular form which can hold data. So Pandas offers us two kind of data frame: series and data frame, data structures. So what is series? Basically, if I choose only one column out of it, let's say I say data longitude. So this is a series. If I now how can I say it is a series? The Pandas provide me a type function. See it says pandas.core.series.series. That means it is a series. This data structure is a series. However, if I get more than one row, let's say I have my entire data frame, and now I write the type function. there you go, you can see pandas.core.frame.data frame. So it's a data frame. Now if let's say I want any more than one row, let's say I'm using longitude and latitude. In that case also I'm going to get a data frame. Hence if I use more than one row, then the data structure is going to be called as data frame. But if I use only a single row, then it is going to be a series. If you want a formal definition, here it is for you. Series is basically a one-dimensional labeled array capable of holding any data type, that is only one column. A data frame is a two-dimensional labeled data structure with columns of potentially different types. I hope this is clear to everyone. Okay, Vedansh is having a doubt. Sir, I cannot copy the address of housing CSV file. Have you downloaded the housing CSV file from the Google Drive? Let me know, Vedansh. Yes, I downloaded. Okay, so as a next step, open this folder icon, files icon, and then using the upload to session storage, upload the file. And let me know if you have done till here. Don't worry guys, we'll go slowly so that everyone is okay. Vedansh is saying come again. Okay, so in the Google Colab you can see this files icon, right? I'm going to open it and I'm going to press this upload to session storage. Now this will open my system storage, and then from here I can go to the folder where I have stored my housing data. I'll click here and I'll say OK. So here you can see it is being uploaded. It will take a little while and then it will be uploaded like this. Are you able, is it fine with Ansh now? Okay. Yeah, see, it's uploaded. So I'll be moving forward now. So the next step, now as I told you, Pandas is the tool for data analysis. So we'll do some data analysis. As I have told you earlier about the head and tail function. Now DF here stands for data frame, right? And data frame could be any name that you can give to your variable. Here I have given it data. So let's say I say D types. Let's see with what function is this method performing. Okay, it is showing me the data type of all the columns that I have. Let us see here. Great. See here the value of longitude is minus 122.23, 122.22. Basically the data type of this column is float. It is having float values. Similarly for latitude, housing median age, total rooms, and every other column except ocean proximity. Here as you can see, ocean proximity has a data type of object. In Python, if we have got anything else than a number, the Python writes it as an object. So it is an object data type. I hope it is clear. So the next function is size or shape. Now I want to know the size of my data frame. How many rows are there in my data frame? How many columns are there in my data frame? So what I'll do, I just do data dot shape. It says 2064010. That means it's in the form. It returns me a tuple. The tuple is in the form of rows, comma columns. That means I have 20,640 rows and 10 columns. See, if you count the columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 columns, right? And I have 20,640 rows. Let me make it a little more comfortable for you guys. Are you able to see the snippet, guys? Are you able to see this diagram?
Yes.
Okay. So here, these are my number of columns and these are my rows, are right. So 10 columns and 20,000 rows. Here head function displays only 5 rows, but the column from here I can see I have total 10 columns. Now next I want to see the difference between the shape and size function. What does size function do? Let us see. It shows the number of rows that are present in my data frame. It shows 20,626. Basically it shows the product of my rows into columns. My data.shape function gives me the number of rows and number of columns separately, while data.size returns a product of rows into columns. Basically it is an array. An array has m rows and columns, and the size can be given by m cross n. I hope everyone understands this bit of maths that you have studied in your 11th and 12th. The size of a matrix is given by m cross n. Similarly, the size of the data frame is given by rows into column, where m is represented as rows and n is represented as columns. I hope this much is clear to everyone. Guys, I'll be moving slowly and steadily so that you can understand each and every bit of today's session. Please let me know wherever you feel any doubt. Shall I proceed further? Everyone, yeah, okay. What about other people? There are total 15 and I can see only 4 or 5 responding. Others also respond, please.
It is pretty clear.
Okay, great. Okay. Again, I'm saying it again and again. Wherever you feel a doubt, you are not able to understand anything, stop me at the time. I'll repeat it for you guys. No issues with that. So let us look into next function. It is nUnique. Let's see what it does. Great. So from here we can see how many unique value each column has. For example, out of 20,640 rows, only 844 values are unique in the longitude column. Rest all are repeated. Similarly for latitude, there are only 862 unique values, while the housing median age has 52 unique values. So these are the number of unique values. Basically nUnique function provides the number of unique values present in our data frame. So you might be wondering how I know these. See, you don't have to remember each and every function. As long as you will practice, you will going to memorize each function. Plus Python provides us thousands of functions and it is impossible for us to remember all. So how can you know which function exists, or what per function each method performs? You have documentation for that. Let me show you guys. There are two ways to know what a function, method is performing. Let me know if you can see my screen. Are you able to see this website, pandas.pydata.org? Great. So basically this is the documentation website for pandas. Wherever you feel like that you are not able to solve, you don't know what a function is performing or what all parameters does it take, just close your eyes and visit this website. You'll get all the functions that pandas provides and how to use them. If I here click at a data frame, I get to see a lot of functions like index, columns, and along with it I can get the definition and the function that this method performs. Here we used the dtypes function, and it says return the dtypes in the data frame. here I have used the dtypes function, and it is returning the data type of every column. Similarly, we have a lot of functions like size, shape. I just showed you, but again there are so many functions I cannot teach you every function. In fact, I myself don't know every function. So the best way is to, whenever you feel there's a need of a particular function, just Google it up. There's no harm in googling, and if you'll go to interviews as well, no one will ask you the syntax. They'll just ask you the logic behind it, and if they want to ask any syntax, they'll allow you to use Google and read the documentation and then use that function to generate output. So they also understand that it is impossible for anyone to learn all these, remember or memorize all these functions. So but just you should know where to go if you have any doubt. Similarly, there's a documentation page for every library, every function that they present in Python programming language. So the next function is column function. So now I want to see how many columns are there, or what are the columns in my data frame. So I'll do data.column. Okay, that gives me data object has no attribute column. It must be columns then. There you go. So it returns me a list of all the columns. In this case, you are able to pretty much visualize the 10 columns. But what if you have a data frame which has thousands of columns? Then the data frame won't provide you the visual appearance of all the 1000 columns. In that case, you can use data.columns to see all the columns present in the data frame. Next function is data.index. From it is pretty much obvious from the name that it will return the index. It returns a range function that it starts from 0 and ends at 20640. So this is the range, and it is incrementing one by one. I hope it is. Can you send me the data set link again? It's present in the chat here only. Wait, let me send it again to you. Yeah, great. So everything is clear right here, right? Till right here. Or any doubt to anyone? Please let me know if everything is clear till now. No doubts. Wow, everyone is intelligent here. Great. What about else? What about everyone else? Vedant says it's clear. Great guys, great then. Just stop me again, I'm saying, if you have any doubt. Okay, let's move forward. So the next function is info function. So let's see what does this function do. The info function provides me information about all the features or all the columns that I have in my data set. So longitude has 20,640 non-null values, and the data type is float. Basically, it is providing me a summary of all the columns, their data types, and the amount of null values or non-null values that they have. In total, we have 10 columns, and every one the d types here is 9 columns are having a float data type, and only one is having object data type. So the next function is describe. Describe provides me the 5 number theory or the 5 number summary. The 5 number summary is basically the 25 percentile, the 50 percentile, the 75 percentile, min and max. Along with it also provide me mean of each feature and the count of each feature. As we can see, we have the count is 20,640 for each feature, and mean values and standard deviation for each feature is visible in this data frame. So next we want to check if we have any null values in my data set or not. So again, it's a pretty much simple function, data.isNull, and it provides me a data frame where it says true or false. If there's a null value, it will just write true here, or else it will write false here. But again, there are 20,000 rows, I cannot visualize all at once. So the next function is data.isNull.sum. Now this will give me the sum of the null values in all the columns. As you can see, longitude has 0 null values, while latitude again has 0 null values, but we can see total bedrooms has 207 null values. That means these 200 value null or NaN stands for not a number, right? Here is also, it is also visible, total bedrooms has 20,433 null values, non-null values. That means the rest are null values. 207 null values. Now what, before proceeding into modeling and machine learning model and statistic model, we must have a clean data set. That is, it shouldn't have any null value. So the next step involves to fill those null values. So I have this total bedrooms. Now there are various techniques to impute the null values, which we'll learn in upcoming sessions. But for now, I'm just going to fill the values with the mean value. So what does this function do? This function is going to fill all the null values with the mean of the value present in this column. Let us see what is the mean. The mean value is 537.87. This is the value, and this is going to be imputed in place of the null values. Now I want it to stay there, so I'll use the in place parameter. My bad, it should be true. In place is a boolean parameter, that is, it takes either true or false, and if I set in place equal to true, instead of returning a copy, it will directly make changes into the data frame. Now if I'll run this function again, data.isNull.sum, there you go, there are no null values in our data set now. It is pretty much clean. So next, another important function is iloc and loc function. So what does these functions do? Basically, iloc is used when I want to access any row based on its position. Let's say index. Let me show you the working of these functions. Data.iloc. Now I want, let's say I want to see the 10th row. I'll just use data.iloc10. I'll get the values of all the features or all the columns that are present in the 10th row. The value of longitude in the 10th row is minus 122.26, latitude is 37.85, housing median is 52. So basically these are the value of all the columns in the 10th row. Now similarly, I want to see use the loc function. Now what does loc do? It is, now let's say I want to access the value of longitude. And okay, just a moment. Yeah, again, as you can see here, the values are slightly different. The loc, what does loc function do is basically loc functions uses, instead of using the position, it uses the values. iloc basically stands for index. I stands for index, where loc stands for the normal values. Now the next function is the group by function. Yeah, so basically what does group by function do? Now I want my data frame to be grouped by a particular column or more than one column. Let's say I want to see how many columns are, basically I want to see the data grouped by ocean proximity. Let's say I'll use data.group by okay, yeah. Now as you can see, I have total 6 categories in ocean proximity, and the mean value for all these columns that are grouped by these ocean proximity values are listed in this table. Let's me take a example as near bay. All those houses that are near the bay area have a mean longitude of minus 122.26, mean latitude of 37.80, mean housing age of 37.7, and similarly for every other value. So this is what group by function does. It groups the entire data frame by a particular column, and then if you want any statistic, let's say you want median, then it will return the median values. Let's say now you want the count of the number, let's say how many houses are near bay. There are 2290 are near bay, 5 are near island, 6551 are near the inland, and 2658 near the near ocean category. So the next thing is, as you can see, there are two types of data. One is float and the other is this text. Other has this text. Basically one has these numbers and the other has this text. So data is divided into two parts, numerical and categorical. The numerical part includes the numbers, whereas the categorical data includes other than numbers, basically the text. So these are the two types of data, numerical data type and categorical data. I hope everything is clear till here. Please let me know if there are any doubts. Please let me know in the chat box. Okay, great. So the next library that we are going to see is a sub library of pandas. It's called the pandas data reader. Now I want to read the data directly from internet. Let's say I want to analyze the stocks of various companies. Then I'm going to use pandas reader, pandas data reader. So this is the syntax. I am going to import my pandas reader library as and provide WB as its alias. Now what I'm going to do is let's say import the stock prices of these two companies, Microsoft and Apple. I'll call it stock data and I'll use wb.data reader. Then let's say there's a specific code for all these companies listed in the stock market. So the code for Microsoft is MSFT, while the code for Apple is AAPL, and my data source is going to be Yahoo Finance. There are a lot of API sources that provide this data, but here I am using Yahoo as my source. Let's say my start date is from 2000, 1st January 2000. So I'll get the data of the stock price of Microsoft and Apple starting from 1st January 2000. Let's say I only want the ADJ close price. Now let us see the data. There you go. So I am getting the stock prices, closing prices of the Microsoft and Apple, the stock prices. Right now you are just seeing it, these are numbers and these might be confusing, but next we'll learn a library called matplotlib, which will help us visualize these numbers into pretty neat graphs. So yeah, before that, let me know if you are aware about covariance and correlation. Please let me know if you are aware about these two statistical terms.
So can you repeat little bit so that it will be a revision for us?
The covariance and correlation.
Yes.
Okay, great, sure. So basically, covariance and correlation are two statistical terms. Now, what does covariance mean? I have two values.
There
Let's
is
say,
some issue for students regarding the module name.
pardon.
There is some issue for module names. People are commenting on chat.
Okay, okay. Module not found in Jupyter. Okay, you have to install it first. If you are using your Jupyter on the system, you can use this syntax called wait pip install pandas data reader. So this is this syntax. You can run it in on your either on your command line or on your Jupyter notebook. After that, you will be able to yeah. So where was I? Okay, I was talking about covariance. So let's say I have two values, continuous values, x and y. Now I want to see if there is any covariance between these two. Let's say if I say if x is increasing, what happens to y if x is increasing? Does y decrease, y increase, or there is no change in y with respect to change in x? So basically, covariance and correlation are these two statistical terms which measure the movement of these two features side by side. This is the formula for covariance and this is the formula for correlation. You don't need to remember the formula. Python directly provides us a function which will compute these for us. So the difference between covariance and correlation is covariance only gives the direction of the variation. If x is increasing along, if I change y and there's an increase in x, then I'll only get the direction, but I will not get the quantity. It will not quantify by what change is coming. Correlation does that only. It along with the direction, it provides the strength or the magnitude by which the change is occurrence. So these are the two functions, covariance and correlation. Now I have imported the data, right? Stock data. Now I want to know the covariance between these Microsoft and Apple. Basically, I want to see if there's a change in stock price of Microsoft, does it affect the stock change in a stock price of Apple as well? Because both are IT companies. So let's say if there's an recession in the IT field only, the business is not there and every IT company is not flourishing, not able to do business. So definitely, if a stock price is affected, if Microsoft's stock price is affected, Apple's stock price is going to be affected as well. So this is what covariance and correlation tells us. There you can see I use the COV function, but I get random numbers. From this I cannot make out, okay, is it increasing, is it decreasing? I cannot get the exact relation between that. To overcome that, we'll use the correlation function. Oh, there you can see the correlation between Microsoft and Apple is 0.97. Let me tell you guys, the correlation is between -1 and 1. If the correlation is 1, it states positive correlation, that is there is a direct relation between Microsoft and Apple. And if it is -1, then it is opposite relation, that is if Apple is increasing, Microsoft will decrease. And if the value is 0, there's neutral, there's no relation between these two stocks. So here you can see there's a correlation of 0.97. It's a quite high positive correlation. As I told you, 1 is the upper limit. So 0.97 is near to 1. That is, in future, if let's say stock prices of Apple fell or fall, then similar change could be observed in Microsoft stock prices as well. So this is how you can use data science and data analytics in the field of stock market, financial market as well, to select which stock you are buying. And many finance company use this skill, and they are looking for skilled data scientists and data analysts who are able to predict if the stock of Apple is going to fall, what will happen to the stock price of Microsoft. I hope everything is clear till now. Please let me know in the chat box. Shall I continue?
Yes, sir.
Great, great. So the next library involves it uses, it provides us the graphs, the plots, the way to visualize the data, these data frames. It is called matplotlib. As again I told you, we'll have to first import it. The syntax is pretty much simple. Import matplotlib. Is anyone trying to say anything? I am not able to hear you. Can you speak a little louder? Hello. Sure. I'll scroll up. Is it fine?
Share with them the link of your collab, right?
That I'll do definitely after the session is over.
No, they can keep referring in the session as well.
Okay. Okay. I have shared the Google Colab link with you. Yeah, great. Now I have the data of the stock prices. Now I want to visualize, are they increasing or they decreasing, or having a different kind of curvature or different kind of movement. So use for that I'll use a matplotlib. So the syntax for importing matplotlib is import matplotlib dot pyplot as plt. See, the Google Colab is also already recommending me what should be the syntax. Now it has been imported. Now I'll plot it. I'll plot my data. Let's say this is my stock data. Now I'll show you the visualization of the Microsoft stock price. I'll use plt dot plot stock data, and the name of my column is MSFT. See, you can see this is how the stock of Microsoft is going. It started at 2000, then it observed a dip, and then it was pretty much constant, and now as you can see it is at all-time high. But this plot is quite vague. You don't have any names, you don't know what it is trying to visualize. If you will show it to someone, that person will say what is it representing. So let us try to make it more attractive, and let us try to make it more informative. So what I can do is basically this, let me tell you, this is one of the line plot, because you can see line here. So let me add axis to it. We have learned in our schools that we should write the name of the columns on the x-axis and the y-axis. So X label provides us this facility. Year is my value that is represented on the x-axis, 2000, 2004, 8, 12, 16, 20. And on my y-axis I have the stock prices. Yeah, I'll use this plt.show to show this plot. Now you can see I can see axis written here, year and stock prices. I'll try to make it a little more attractive by using grid lines. I'll use the plt.grid function. Now you can see I have grid lines on my plot as well. Now if I want to increase the size of my plot, I can use plt.fig figure fig size equal to, let's say, 12,8. Now a bigger plot is, you know, observable on my screen. So basically this is the stock price for Microsoft. Now let us similarly visualize the same for Apple as well. Okay, my bad, just a moment. Here it should be Apple. This is the, you know, graph for Apple stock price. Now I want to, you know, compare it side by side. I want it on the same plot. So what I can do is, before plt.show, I can write the same syntax here as well. plt.plot stock data, where the name of a column is APL. Here what I'll do, I'll use label. I'll call it Microsoft. Here I'll use the label. Label is basically a parameter that provides a label to your line, Apple. Now I'll use plt.legend. Basically what does legend do? It will print these labels on the graph. As you can see now, both the stock prices are represented on the same curve. Let me just make it a little smaller, let's say 10,6. Yeah, there you go. So the orange line represents the stock prices for Apple, while the blue lines represents the stock prices for Microsoft. Mind you, this is the latest data. So if you will see the last line, it says 2021-4/9. That is day before yesterday. Saturday, Sunday, the stock market is closed. So this is for the data till Friday, this past Friday. And if you see the visualization, it is clear that stock price of Microsoft is quite high as compared to Apple, and it is pretty much, you know, smooth as compared to Apple as well. Now if you want to invest in any of these stocks, you can choose Microsoft because it is, you know, observing an increase. But right now it is going to be a costly because it's $250. Obviously we cannot buy right now because we are sitting in India. You can do similar analysis for, you know, stock prices of Indian stock prices as well.
We can buy American as well.
Okay, yeah, definitely we can using those apps. Yeah, we can buy American as well. So mind you, this is genuine data. I'm not showing you any fake data. So this is extracted from Yahoo Finance. Here is the source, right? Yahoo is the source here. So the next graph is the bar graph. So everyone knows here, right, what bar graph represents. Everyone, you know, has pretty much knowledge about these graphs, the bar graphs.
Yes, sir.
And histograms, what all these represent, right? Yeah, so for bar graphs, I'll be using my housing data. Okay, so I want to know how many values are corresponding to the near bay ocean proximity, and how many are to their island inland. Let me just show it to you. Just a moment. Ocean. I am using the n unique function here. Total 5 unique values, right? Now I'll use another function called value counts. See, I have total 6 categories, let's say 3 to 5 categories, and it shows the count corresponding to each category. Less than 1 hour distance from ocean, there are total 9,000 values, and for the inland category there are 6,551 values, near ocean 2658, near bay 2590, and for island there are only 5 values. Now I want this data to be represented on a bar graph. So what I can do, yeah, so I'll set this up as y. I'll use the dot values method. It will just return the values in that case. Right now you can see the category name as well as the values. It's a pandas series. Now I just want the values. I'll use the values function. This will be my y value, and my x value will be data, ocean proximity dot value counts dot index. Now I want to plot these. Let us first see what is the index. The index will be the categories: less than 1 hour ocean, inland, near ocean, near bay island, and y will be their corresponding value counts. Now I'll plot it using the bar graph. The syntax for that is plt.bar, where my x is equal to, you can see x represents the values that will be represented on the x-axis. Height will be their corresponding values. Width is again a parameter that I can use to make it visually more appealing, or if I want thicker bars or thinner bars, only for that purpose. And height is equal to y. See, again, to make it a little more pretty, I'll use the plt.grid, plt.show, and in case of my y, plt.y label, I'll just add value counts, and plt.x label, ocean proximity is my column. I can give a title as well to my plot. Let's say I want to say plt.title, ocean proximity value counts. See, now my graph is a little more appealing, visually appealing, and I can interpret it better. As you can see, island is showing no values. It is just because it is relative to all rest of the values, it is quite small. As we saw, it was just 5 only. So if I want to alter the values on my y-axis, I'll say plt.yticks. I'll use np.arange 0 to 8000. Right now I'm observing a dip of a gap of 2000 values. Let's say I want only 1000, or let's say 500. Now you can see I have a lot more values on the y-axis, and the graph is a little more compact. Still, you will not be able to visualize the island just because the difference in number of values. I hope till now everything is clear. Vedansh is saying the stock data code isn't working. It should not be the case. It's working in my collaboratory. We'll see it. We'll try to fix it. What's the issue coming? Is everything clear till now? Let me know if all the graphs are clear. Great. So everyone knows the difference between bar graph and histogram, or do I need to tell it? When do we use bar graphs and when do we use histograms?
Yeah, tell in brief.
Sure. Anyone wants to answer? If anyone wants to explain, you know. No. Okay, so I'll go ahead. Okay, so basically histograms are used when we have numerical data, while bar graphs are used when we have the categorical data. Here you can see I have on my x-axis I have all the categorical data, that is the text type: ocean, inland, near ocean, nearby island. Now this cannot be represented using the histogram, but let's say I want to visualize a continuous or a numerical feature. Let's say I want to see the median house value. I want to visualize the frequency of median house values, what all price house values are occurring at at what frequencies. So I'll be using histograms in that case, and the syntax for that is plt.hist let's say data, and the column should be median income. Now I want to visualize the median income of the families living in these houses. There you go. It's a kind of skewed. Okay, so okay, just a moment. Let me make it a little more appealing again. I'll use the bins. Bins is how wide I want to distribute it. Let's say I use it 50. This will increase more categories. 50 is usually too much, so we'll stick to 25. Great. Next, we'll add the X label. Median income of people. Let's say just median income. plt.y label. Frequency, as histograms represent are also called frequency plots. Grid for a better visualization. Now my plot is pretty much better looking. So what does anyone know what this plot is called, what this distribution is called? Has anyone ever heard of normal distribution, uniform distribution? Okay, Snehal says yes. So what kind of distribution is this, Snehal? Can you please tell me? Don't worry if your answer is wrong, no one's going to say anything to you. Yes, you will get the recording of this session. Great. Snehal is answering skewed distribution. Correct. So it's a skewed distribution. What does skewed mean by? Skewed mean by is my data is shifted to a particular side. As you can see here, I have a longer tail on the right side, so it's rightly skewed data, and this can be generally be observed in case of income groups or heights. Let's say there is a society, so there are three kind of people. First, those who are very poor. Second, those who are in middle class income group, and third, who are very rich. And if you try to plot them, you will observe this kind of skewed plot in most of the cases. In most of the countries, there are some, in developing countries, if I say, there are some poor people. Then there are a lot of middle class people who are who earn in a particular range, middle class range, while there are very few rich people. So this is kind of distribution is observed in case of developing countries income graph. There are a lot middle class people as compared to rich and as compared to poor. But in case of developed countries, you can observe the graph to be skewed towards left. That is, there are more rich people as compared to middle class or poor people. So we'll be discussing about these normal distributions, skew distributions, different kind of probability distribution in the upcoming sessions. Today is just on session on pandas, numpy and matplotlib, because these are the basics of data analytics. You should know these three libraries because they are going to be used in every other case. So the next plot here comes is the scatter plots. So what is scatter plot? Just now I told you about correlation and covariance. It tells me whether a change is observed in one feature when a change is observed in another. So now how to visualize that? Scatter plots are used in those cases. To measure to visualize the correlation, we use scatter plots. These are also known as correlation plots. Guys, don't worry, I have provided a in-depth assignment for you guys as well, where you can use this knowledge that you have learned in the lecture and apply on the questions that have been asked there. This will make you more comfortable in these libraries. So the syntax for scatter plot is plt.scatter. Again, we'll be using our, let's say, stock price data. I'll visualize scatter plots using both the data. Okay. First, I'm using the stock price data, and let me remind you guys the correlation values that we observed in that case between the Apple and Microsoft is 0.97. Is everyone clear why 1 is being shown here?
Yes, sir.
What about everyone else? Is everyone aware why 1 is here? Let me tell you, no issues. See, this is the formula for correlation, right? Now here x and y are two different variables, but in this case here MSFT corresponding to MSFT, that means x and y both are equal. Similarly, apple and apple, it is pretty much intuitive. The correlation between the apple and apple should be only 1 only, right? How can apple vary with apple? Because apple is the same thing. So here instead of y we are going to place x, so this will become nothing but 1. If I substitute x here, this is going to become xi minus x bar whole square. Similarly, this is going to be xi minus x by whole square. This will be cancelled out. Okay, just I'll visualize for you. Yeah, let me know if snippet is visible. Now instead of y I put x here. Similarly here also x bar. Here also x and x bar. Now if you will solve it, the numerator and denominator will come out to be the same thing. The squares will be cancelled out by the square root, and it will be left with x minus x bar xi minus x bar whole square raised to the power xi minus x bar I whole square. So this is, they are nothing but the same term, so these will get cancelled out and my output will be 1 only. Let me know if it is clear. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
The mathematics that I have done.
So that part is not visible, sir.
Okay, that part is not visible. So you cannot see the snippet.
No, sir.
Okay. Let me just okay. I don't know why snippet is not visible. Don't worry, I'll share this document with you after the session is over. For now, just try to visualize it. In this case, x and y both are equal. So if you will solve this equation, you will get 1 as the output here. So you'll get 1 as the answer in case when both the stocks are Apple only or both the stocks are Microsoft only. So again, now I'll try to visualize the scatter plot between these two stocks. MSFT and stock data. The Microsoft stock will be represented on the x-axis and the Apple stock will be represented on the y-axis. The label should be a Microsoft stock price and the y label should be Apple stock price. plt.show. See, you can observe a kind of linear graph, almost linear, and this is pretty much obvious because we observed as correlation of 0.97 here, 0.97154. This is, you know, very high correlation because 1 is the upper limit and 0.97 is very near to 1. So we should observe a linear, pretty much linear graph. This shows us that if a positive change is observed in Microsoft stock price, that there are a very high chance, 0.97 times chances, that a similar positive change is going to be observed in Apple's stock price as well. Similarly, if a negative change is observed in Microsoft stock price, a similar negative, you know, change will be observed in Apple's stock price as well. So this is basically what a scatter plot represent. Now, you know, let us look at our housing price data. Here there are a lot of features. Let's say I want to visualize scatter plot between any two features, plt.scatter data longitude and data latitude. I'll represent plt.x label. See, in this case there's a negative correlation being observed. That is, if I'm trying to increase the longitude, my latitude is decreasing. Similarly, if I want to increase my latitude, my longitude should decrease. Let us use some other features which are not that much correlated. Let us see. Let me take any two random features. Let's say I want total rooms, and on the x-axis, y-axis, that there should be latitude only. They are two completely unrelated features. Logically, I'm speaking. I'm not seeing the data. I'm just speaking logically that there shouldn't be any relation between the total rooms and the latitude. See, there's this random graph. You cannot say anything specific after looking at this graph. So if we, you know, let's say see the correlation value between these two plots. Total rooms and latitude. Now I use the core function. See, a very small negative correlation, minus 0.0361. That is, there is a negative correlation, but the quantity, but the strength of that correlation is very, very less. That is 0.036. We cannot say for sure about the relation, about the change in total rooms will, you know, definitely impact the change in latitude as well. And it should be the case because logically thinking, latitude and total rooms should not have any relation between them, right? I hope you are getting my point. Yeah. So the next library, so these were all about the, you know, plots that you can use to visualize your data and, you know, make a better inference of the data. So any doubt till now in these two libraries? pandas and NumPy, pandas and Matplotlib. These are pretty much basic libraries. We are not doing anything complex. That as soon as we'll progress into the sessions, we'll see complex things as well, like various machine learning models. Is there a difference between, see, you can call scatter plot as covariance plots as well. As I told you, correlation has both strength as well as magnitude, while just strength as well as direction, while covariance just gives us the direction, whether it is positive or negative, while correlation provides us a magnitude as well. So that's the only difference. Covariance has no boundation, it can go from minus infinity to infinity, but correlation is fixed between -1 and 1 so that you can quantify the relation. I hope it's clear. Got it. Great. So the next library that we are going to talk today about is the NumPy. So what is NumPy? Let's see. Basically NumPy stands for numerical Python. When you want to do large numerical analysis on arrays, NumPy arrays, so that in that case we'll be using NumPy. Basically NumPy is optimized in your hardware only, so that is pretty much quick as well. So it is optimized library, you can say, for large calculations. Everyone is aware about the list data structure available in Python, right? Is there anyone who doesn't know about list? Is anyone there who's not who doesn't know what list is in Python? Let's say a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a list in Python. This is not an array, this is a list. List is another data structure to store values. Is everyone aware of these? Okay, we know. So let me ask you a question. I want everyone to answer. What should be the output of this? I am saying 2 multiplied by a. What should be the answer? Write in the chat box. Quickly, give me the answer. Without running on your Google Colab notebooks. Without running. Those who are saying that they know list, quickly give me the answer. Do not run on your. Do not try to cheat. Just give me the answer. No issues if it is wrong. We'll fix it. We'll fix your wherever you are wrong. But please try to be honest and give the answer honestly. What should be the answer? Snail says multiply every element with 2. What about everyone else? Vishal says 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay. Shivani says print twice. Print a twice. Okay. Shivangi says okay. Come on. Few more. I need a few more answers. Then I'll discuss it. Vedansh is saying print a twice. Okay. Oh, now I think it was twice only. Yeah, Snehal. So the answer would be, it will be printing the list 2 times. Shivangi's output is correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2 times. So this is a limitation of list. Now if I wanted to multiply, let's say I wanted to multiply 2 with every element, then how I have to do that? What should I do? In that case I'll be using NumPy arrays. I'll create same ARR. Let's say this should be the array. First of all, let me again, till now you guys must have understood that we have to import a library first. Import NumPy as NP. NP is again alias that I'm provided to the NumPy library. Now I'll make us use the syntax to prepare a same array with same values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. np.array. This will creates an NumPy array. Now I'll enter my list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's say I am doing print 2 into ARR. Now tell me what should be the output. Now what will be the output? What will be the answer, guys? Quickly, you were able to tell the answer in case of list. Now tell me the answer in case of NumPy arrays. Come on, give me any answer that you logically what should be the answer for you guys. Come on, come on. Try to answer. By every element by 2. Okay. What about everyone else? Are you of the same opinion, or do you have any other answer? Come on, we'll discuss your opinions. Multiply each element with 2. Okay. What same? Same answer. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. Same as previously, in case of list. That is what you're trying to say, or something else you're trying to say? No, multiply by 2. Okay, great. Yes, the answer would be now it will multiply every element by 2. Now I think it is pretty much clear that why are we using numpy arrays, because it is used for numerically calculations, right? So now I want this, in this case this was a 1D array. Now how to know it was a 1D array? I'll use the endim function, endim method, endim, I mean n says the nth, and dim stands for dimensions. The answer is 1. That is, this is a one dimensional array, or it is also called as vector. One dimensional array is also called as vector. Now next we are going to create a two dimensional array. Mind you, array can be of any dimension, 1 2 3 4. np.arr array. The difference between the syntax is down, you will have to put two square brackets, 1 2 3 comma 4 comma 5 comma 6. Now I have entered two lists in my two dimensional array. Now if I'll print it, see, it's a 2 cross 3 array. I have 2 rows and 3 columns. Everyone understands this, right? 2 cross 3. What does 2 cross 3 means? arr2 dot shape. 2 cross 3, where 2 stands for number of rows and 3 stands for number of columns. Everyone understands this, right? Tell me in the chat box. Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, next we'll try to create a 3D array as well. So by now you could have guessed, we'll be using 3 square brackets. Uh, 1 comma 2 comma 3, 4 comma 5 comma 6, 7 comma 8 comma 9. Now you can see it's a 3-dimensional array, but still again you cannot visualize it because a 3-dimensional on 2-dimensional plane is not possible. So what I'll do, to confirm it, I'll use endim. Right. Did anyone understood what I did here? Can anyone tell me any random guess what I try to do here? Any guesses? Any guesses? Come on, guys. Think. Okay. Plotting the matrix values. Okay. Let's say I do here ARR2. Now I get something else. Why? Represents snail says represents 3D in 2D. Basically, this I am sure function is used to plot images in Matplotlib. Basically, images are nothing but arrays. Basically, the 3-dimensional arrays having width and length as length and breadth as 2 dimension, and the third dimension is the color code, RGB. Have you ever heard of it before? RGB, red, green, blue. If you will see an image, it's a series of numbers only. So this, in this way we can represent images in Matplotlib. Don't worry if you are not able to understand this. We'll be discussing this in depth in upcoming session, where we'll be working with images, dog images, cat images, cartoon images. We'll be doing this. So I was just, I was just messing around with you guys, nothing else. Don't bother over this. We'll be covering this. So okay, now the next topic is indexing and slicing. This is my ARR2, right? Now let's say I want to extract a particular element. Let's say I want to get 2 as my output, as I want to see only 2. So what I can do is I can index that particular, ask for that index of for that particular element. So basically, where is my 2 situated? 2 is at my first row and in the second column. Let me know if you are able to understand this. 2 is in first row and second column. Is everyone clear with it? First row and second column. Great. Now I am saying first row and second column. The first bracket represents the rows. This square bracket represents the rows, and this one is going to represent the columns. Now if I enter it, I am getting 6 as the answer. Why? Shouldn't I get 2 as my answer? First row, second column. I did the same. First row, second column, but I got 6 as answer. 0 based index. Exactly correct. You guys are very intelligent. The indexing starts from 0 in Python, so it should be 0 and 1. First row, second column. Yeah, that means 0th row and first column we're going to minus 1, because the indexing starts from 0 in case of Python. Great, Vedansh. Yeah, great, Shivani. Correct answer. What about everyone else? Have you understood what I did here? Why did I go for 0 and 1 and not for 1 and 2? Okay. What about everyone else? See, I want everyone else to respond as well. I don't want only 4-5 students communicating. I want everyone to understand what I'm trying to say. Please do let me know if there's any doubt. Feel free to open your mic and speak up. Don't hesitate. Do not hesitate. We don't bite. We'll just answer your questions. Shall I proceed then? Okay, it seems everyone is clear with it. Yeah. So, okay. Let us do a couple more of exercises of this kind of indexing. Let's say now I want let's say now I want 3 is in first row and the last column. Now it's up to you. Now it's your exercise. Tell me, how can I get 3? Write the syntax in the chat box. I want 3 as my answer. What should be the code? Snehal says 0,2. Okay. Everyone else, please try to guess. Yeah. Vedant says again 0,2.
0,2.
0,2. Okay. Snehal says okay, another syntax. Great. Snehal knows about slicing. What about everyone else? Please come up with answers. Don't worry, we'll try to correct it if you have entered wrong answers. Tell me, guys, come on. Quick. Okay, so let us try both the answers. 0,2. I'm getting 2, 3 out of output. Great. Now let's try the other one. 0 and 2. See, so these are the two ways you can do the slicing. Either you can represent using 2 brackets, or you can put up commas between the rows and column type. So both ways are correct, no issues with that. Now let's look at another thing called slicing. Let's say I want to extract the entire first row. Then what should I do? In that case, I'll be using the slicing method. Yeah. Did everyone get what I did here? Is everyone clear with it? Okay, let me tell it then. So basically, the colon is used in case when I want a continuous sequence. Instead of a single value, I want a continuous sequence. I want entire first row. Either I can directly write it or I can use it from 0 to 1. So the last element, the last number is exclusive of that. I'll get only one row. But if I write 0 to 2, then in that case I'll get both the rows. The last number is exclusive of it. So this will run from 0 and 1, not till 0 and 1 and 2. It will run only 0 and 1. If I'll write 3, I'll get an error because it is out of okay. I'll get an error. Okay, I didn't get an error. Why is that case? Okay, because definitely I have 4 elements. Yeah, right. So yeah, I only want the first row. That should be this should be the syntax. Now let's say I want the second row. This should be the syntax. Instead of 0, I'm going to write as 1 here. Is everyone clear with it? Please let me know if there's any doubt, because we are going to use slicing and indexing enough in the upcoming section, so you must be pretty clear with it. Also, you have a couple of questions in your assignment as well on indexing and slicing for column. Okay. Now I'll put a comma here. Let's say I want the first column. I'll get it. Again, this is exclusive of it, so that's why I'm going to get the first column. If I'll write second here, then I'll get 1 comma 4 and 2 comma 5, the first 2 columns. If I'll write 3 here, then I'm going to do all the 3 columns. Let's say you want only the second column, then my syntax would be this: 2 comma 5. Is it clear, Snehil? Okay, great. What about everyone else? Shall I move forward? Okay. So now I want to create an array of zeros, only zeros, no other values. So what should be my syntax? These are very basics. These will be used in when we are doing deep learning and okay, shape. Okay, I didn't mention the shape. Let's say my shape is 2 comma 3. You might be wondering why are we creating just zeros and random arrays. These will be used when we'll be doing deep learning algorithms. In that case, we have to randomly initialize our arrays. So in that case, either we can use zeros, ones, or any random value. So I hope this is clear. It gives me a 2 cross 3 array of just zeros. Here I am getting 0 point. That is, my data type is float. I can change it to int as well. Now I'm getting only 0, not 0 points. So here I change the data type. Is this clear? This is very basic things, guys, and we'll be using them in deep learning and machine learning algorithms. So for that, it should be clear to you. Now similarly, I want to create an array of ones. Simple syntax is np dot once. Now let's say my shape is 4,5. My d type is float only. D type stands for data type. Now I'll print the array. I get a 4x5 array of 1 point. Right. Now if I want integer, I'll just use int. Right. Now let's say I want an array of 2s or 3s. I don't have any syntax for 2s and 3s. We have a common syntax after 0 and 1 called np dot full. Now I have to enter my shape 4,5 and the number that I want to fill with. Let's say I want to fill with 6.7. I'll get a 4x5 array of 6.7 where the only value is 6.7. Right. Now I want any random value. Let's say I don't want to put a fixed value. I just want random values that, you know, okay numpy, whatever value you think, just fill it. So for that I'll be using a random module. np.random .rand. Let's say my range is 0 to 10. Okay, just a moment. Okay, don't worry, I'll fix it. I'll let you know. I think I'm having a little doubt here. I'll fix it. So let's move to the next step. If I want to update the matrix, let's say I have this ARR5. Right, now I want to change a particular value. Let's say I want to change the first value. Right, this is the value, 1 is the value. Right, now I want to change it to 5. Now after that, if I'll visualize ARR5, I'll get 5 in place of 1 there. So this is how I can update my matrix. Okay, let me try. Again, it won't, it will just give a single value, right? Because I want to generate an array of, you know, multiple values or a single value. So for that the syntax would be something else. I'll you know, let you know in the next class. I'll fix that. I'll let you know in the next class. Okay, this should be syntax. Nope, it cannot broadcast. No, I'll check the syntax and let you know after the class. Yeah, we'll see this in the next class. I'll check the syntax myself, don't worry. Yeah, so the next is the data types that we have already talked about. Let's say I want to do some mathematical operations on the array. I'll create an array. Let's say array 7, array 6, np.array, some random values 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 2. This is one array. Basically this is a vector, one dimensional array. Now ARR 7 np dot array 5 6 7 8. Now I want to do mathematical operations on these two arrays. Okay, let's say I want to do an element wise addition. So what I can do is ARR 6 plus ARR 7. As you can see, it has given an result of an array in which all the corresponding values are added to each other. 1 plus 5, 2 plus 6, 3 plus 7, 4 plus 8. This is called element wise addition. I have two arrays and they are being added correspondingly element wise. Is it clear to everyone? Okay. So yeah, the add operation, there is inbuilt add operation. The function would be the same, form will be the same. It will just output the added values. Both functions will perform the same function. There you go, you get the same output. This is called element wise addition. Next is the dot product. Dot product is the vector product. Dot product, it will return a scalar value. I hope everyone is aware of the dot product. What does dot product means in matrix and vectors? See, is everyone able to understand why 70 came the output? Okay, let me tell you. Yeah, so basically I have these two arrays, right? 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 and 5 comma 6 comma 7 and 8. These are the two vectors that I have. Now if I do the dot product with it, I'll correspondingly multiply each element. 1 with 5, 2 with 6, 3 with 7 and 4 with 8. Then if you then I'll add all these up and I'll get 70 as my output. 1 into 5 plus 2 into 6 plus 3 into 4, 3 into 7 plus 4 into 8. See, 70 is my output in both the cases. So this is what dot product is doing, right? So next, another important function is called the stack function. Okay, one more thing before moving to that. You in the NumPy functions provide us another parameter called axes. That will deal on stack function only. Wait, yeah. So I have these two arrays, right? ARR 6 and ARR 7, right? Now I want to stack these one over the other. So I can do that using the stack function. By stacking I mean I want to place one over the other. So I'll say np.stack, then I'll mention both of my arrays, ARR 6 and ARR 7. Now there's another parameter called axis parameter. What does that mean? There are going to be two axes, 0 and 1. If I want to stack them row wise, then I'm going to say axis equal to 0. And if I want to stack them column wise, then I'm going to say axis equal to 1. I hope you are able to visualize the difference between the two. Here I'll use axis equal to 0. See, in first case both are stacked row wise, and in the second case both are stacked column wise. I hope it's clear. Yeah, so now we have only two functions left. important functions. It's the reshape function, ARR6. Let's say it's already in one shape. Let's say I use another function, right? I make it ARR8. Now this is ARR8, right? If I visualize the shape, it will be 4,2. Now I want to reshape it into 2,4. From the column vector, I am able to, move it into the row shape. See, I have changed the shape from 4 cross 2 to 2 cross 4. If I don't know the column values, I can just give -1. It will automatically interpret what shape it has to, convert it into. Right. So some other functions that there are kind of for your homework. Please go and search about these functions: np.arange, np.min, max, mean, standard, square root, and absolute. Go and try to read the documentation. Similarly, there's a documentation just like here it is for pandas. There's a documentation for numpy as well. So here you can go and read the documentation of about various functions in numpy. This is the reference PDF. Also, there's no compulsion, you can visit any website. Numpy functions, you'll get a lot of links. See, there are Geeks for Geeks. Then there's a reference, again the one that I opened just now. This is the official document. So you visit these websites and learn about these functions, what they do. So this is pretty much your homework, and along with it I'm going to send you this assignment as well. So this is the assignment that I've prepared for you guys. It has questions for pandas, matplotlib, and numpy, right? So it has a mix of both coding as well as theoretical questions. So try to answer them all. I'll share the Google Colab notebook. You can download it on your system and do it on your Jupyter notebook, and you have to mail me. Okay. Snail says, can you once again explain the reshape function? Yeah, sure. Which part were you not able to understand? This is ARR8, right? ARR8 dot shape. It's currently a 4 cross 2 matrix, right? It has 4 rows and 2 columns. This much you understand the parameter inside the function. Which one? I didn't use any parameter in case of reshape. The -1 part. Okay. So see, -1, what happens with -1 is basically if you write -1, you are saying to numpy, okay, interpret on your own what should be the correct reshaping. Let's say this is 4,2, right? I cannot reshape into 4,3. This is not possible because I only have values for 4 and 2. I don't have the third column, so this will end up in an error. So if I write -1, Python will automatically interpret what shape should it be reshaped into. Similarly, if I don't know the number of rows, I'll say -1 here, but I know the number of columns, let's say 4. So it will automatically, not -4, it should be 4. It will automatically reshape into a 2 cross 4 array. -1 means that you are giving the responsibility to the machine to interpret on its own. Yeah. So Shivangi is asking from where we get the documentation. You don't have to worry, you just have to Google numpy functions or just say numpy documentation. The first link that you're going to get is this numpy documentation. Then you can visit various links. There are the manuals, but NumPy's documentation is a little vague, so I would advise just Google NumPy functions and visit Geeks for Geeks. Geeks for Geeks provide, you know, a pretty much good explanation for NumPy functions. Yeah, there you go, Geeks for Geeks. See, there are a lot of functions. They have a whole complete library. There are a lot of functions like tanh. These are trigonometric functions. There are a lot of other functions. You just don't have to remember every function. You just have to know that these functions exist. Fix, floor. What does floor function do? Let me, you know, show you. Let's say I'm saying np.floor 4.5. Now is the browser visible? See, the floor function is returning the floor of the input. That is, let me show you the application of it. I am writing here np.floor 4.5. It will give me 4. Let's say if I am entering a fraction and I am using a floor function, so it will return me the integer just less than that value. The immediate below integer before 4.5 is 4. Now if I use the ceil function, CIEL, it will return 5, the immediate next upper integer. I hope you understood my point. Let me know in the chat box if there's any other doubt. And for documentation, again, you can directly Google whichever function you want. Let's say if you want to know about NumPy max function, you'll get it. See, here is the documentation. It's saying it takes two variables, x1, x2. These are other, you know, parameters. If you don't understand the meaning, don't worry, you have the definition as well. Out, what does out mean? A location into which the result is stored. Similarly, where is another keywords that you know. Similarly, there are minimum function as well. So there are a lot of functions, and that's stock data code. I'll see to that. And you know, share the updated Google Colab with you guys. Don't worry. So again, I'm trying to say you don't have to remember each and every function. Whenever you are stuck somewhere, Google it. No one knows all the functions and no one knows the definition of all the functions. You just should know how to Google which function to use. So that was pretty much it from my side. Now if you guys have any doubts or you want to discuss anything, you know, have any queries, please, you know, feel free to discuss. Yeah, so it's now your time.
Also, students who haven't registered yet, please complete your registration process. Okay, so the whole of the bootcamp will be like this, very interactive, and every single doubt of yours will be covered. Okay.
Yeah. And Vedansh, are you on the group? Are you added to the group?
Not yet.
Not
He's
yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so if you can, once you get enrolled, please share the screenshots on the group. I'll look into it. What doubt you are getting. If anyone else, you know, gets doubt in assignments, I will be sharing the assignment on the group only. And if anyone has any doubt, feel free to share it on the WhatsApp. We'll try to answer it. And also, please, what all thing we'll be discussing in the next class. In the next class, we'll be looking into, you know, machine learning algorithms like linear regression and logistic regression. Now I want to know from you guys, like, if the timing is fine, you know, the days are fine, or you want any adjustment in timetable.
No, days are fine. We can work with that.
Okay.
So guys, work on your assignment. Okay.
So we'll be
So
sharing
let's
the
conclude.
assignment on the WhatsApp group, and those who haven't
And
registered,
recording as well.
yeah, recording as well as the updated Google Collaboratory notebook. So get yourself registered and, you know, take full benefit of it. Also, if you have any friends who are willing to join the bootcamp, please let them know about the bootcamp. We'll be, you know, covering a lot of theory as well as projects.
Yes, yes, and if they have skipped this first session, we will also conduct it again if they
Yeah.
want to. So they can join now as well. Okay.
So no issues with that. Anyone can join at any point. Also, we have the recorded session, so it won't be an issue for them as well.
Great. So let's conclude. Okay.
Okay, great. Bye bye, guys. See you in the next session.